Thank you. It's certainly a pleasure to be here this evening with you. One of the largest Halloween events in the country, Universal Orlando Resort Halloween Horror Nights, brings in hundreds of thousands of guests each year for more than 27 nights of haunted mazes, scare zones, and thrilling shows. Named the best Halloween event by Amusement, Halloween Horror Nights has expanded to include events in Hollywood, California, Singapore, and Japan. Tonight we are pleased to welcome 4 of Universal Orlando's art and design team members, beginning with TJ Mannarino, who is the senior director. TJ oversees a wide variety of projects, including Mardi Gras, Halloween Horror Nights, holiday offerings, and many special events. Rick Spencer, he's the creative manager. Rick collaborates as a writer and director on special projects and annual events. David Hughes, senior designer of art and design. David develops Halloween Horror Night haunted mazes and street scenes. And finally, Kim Grommell, senior designer. Brings vision of his own imagination and those of fellow artists to reality through graphic design, paintings, and incredibly detailed plans. So please welcome members of the Universal Orlando Art and Design team.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that nice introduction. We want to welcome you guys tonight to what we're calling an evening with some Halloween Horror Night storytelling. In prior years or prior experiences that you might have been to some of our other talks, we talked a lot about the event itself, a lot of how it takes the many months to create it, envision it, and produce it. But tonight we want to kind of take a different angle, take the aspects of the stories that we create and a lot of the history and or real type products or stories that are out there and actually come in with concepts, different types of environments, from sets to characters, and then bring them to our audiences in October. With the many years that we've been working with the History Center over about 2 years now, we've really enjoyed an opportunity to learn a lot more about and appreciate the world of history. Actually being a part of this exhibit has really kind of given us a whole new view of what we do here in Orlando and how it really actually touches the world. As they mentioned in the introduction a little bit, we actually are missing 2 of our traditional storytellers because they're actually on a plane right now flying to Japan to help our park out in Osaka. They're working on their street program for us, Mike Aiello and Patrick Quillier. At the same time, we also collaborate and support our Singapore Park and our Hollywood Park. So I know one of the missions of the History Center definitely talks about how history is created here in Central Florida and it touches the world. And this is a small example of that. How Halloween Horror Nights Universal Studios actually started this event some 23 years ago. And now it's actually international, 4 different locations across the world, seeing many other people who love the world of horror. And actually scaring people in 4 different locations. So that's kind of fantastic for us. Also, I wanted to also say thank you to the wonderful staff of the History Center, who's actually partnered with us over the last few years. They have been fantastic to work with. They've actually really accepted our kind of crazy vision that we'd like to create these wonderful stories and actually bring them to life. And actually, if we can actually move people from tears to happiness to actually fright. We actually love that, and they've definitely done a great job with the exhibit this time, so I thank them again. So I don't know where Mike went. Can you sit down on this? Okay. They disappeared. Oh, sorry. But for us, we also wanted to say thank you also to the History Society, because you guys, this is the second time you've hosted us. And we've actually enjoyed the opportunity to speak in front of you, to talk a little bit about our backgrounds. And we're going to probably start off that way. I know a lot of also the mission is that talk about Central Florida history. 23 years of creating kind of these crazy stories, is quite unique. A lot of us have been doing it for definitely for many, many years, from 15 to 18 years in ourselves. All of us are Orlando-based artists, came to Central Florida for various reasons, and actually have been quite successful in the art community because the art community is so strong in this area. And we definitely tell everybody that Central Florida is a great place to come work and experience kind of the world of art and design. Because it is quite unique of all the different things that happen in Central Florida that you probably don't see anyplace else. So, but tonight we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the story. We're going to do something a little bit different. In the past, we'll usually kind of do a presentation, and we'll talk a lot, and then we'll stop and we'll let you guys ask us questions. Well, tonight, this is kind of our version of those ghost stories that used to be told to you either by a friend, or you used to be this ghost storyteller, and there's probably a few guys that can probably point to tell stories around those old campfires, and those area kind of secluded places. You either wanted to kind of scare your friends or your little sister, depending. But tonight we're going to do that. We're going to take you through some stories, kind of talk about the inspiration of where they came from history, talk a little bit about how they were created, talk a little bit about some of the ways that they actually happened the way we wanted to, or maybe how they changed. But it's very informal. We want you guys to be part of these stories. So will you stop and want to raise a hand and then ask us a question, we will answer it. So don't wait or think that you have to, if you want to wait till the end, definitely this is going to be kind of a rolling forum. We're going to talk about some major components of story, but we also want you guys to join in and be a part of it. With that, every good story starts with a storyteller, and I've assembled a few of them here tonight. Each of them come with different backgrounds. Each of them come with different unbelievable talents. And they bring their talents and experience to tell the story the way that has been so successful for us at Universal. I'm going to ask each one of them to tell a little bit about themselves, a little bit about what they do for us at Universal, and also a little bit about how many years they've been here in Central Florida doing this. So I'm going to start with Rick, and then we'll work our way down.
My name is Rick Spencer. And
This one?
yeah.
Okay, take it.
And I'm a congenital liar. I am so good at being a congenital liar that I make a living in it. So people pay me for stories that are not true. Before I get into that, I want to just compliment the History Center on taking a bold step in allowing Universal Orlando to present a new kind of exhibit that's a little more dynamic maybe than things that have been done in the past. But I think it draws in an entirely new audience. People who like what we do, who come here, who've maybe never been to the History Center before, now get to experience it all. And so this has been an extremely proud project for us. I mean, we really love being able to collaborate with the History Center and do this in a way that's really never been done before. Anyway, I'm a storyteller, I'm a novelist, I write screenplays and television shows. And I now have made it to the inner circle of the best job in the world, which is entertaining each and every one of you with stories that we are now drawing from history. And that for those of you who are following this year's presentation, you're starting to discover that we have gone back centuries into history to pull fact, turn it into fact and fiction, and make it entertaining. For those of you who are exploring that, it's very, very rewarding for us because you're learning things that you may not have known. And that's what I bring to the table. I take their ideas and visions and I turn them into words.
Hi, I'm Kim Grommell, and this is my 16th year with Halloween. I started as an illustrator and a painter up in the Philadelphia area, and worked there for a long time. Moved down here with my family 17 years ago, freelanced, then started working with Universal. In that time, Halloween is just, I've always been a Halloween fan. I mean, my house gets done as Halloween. I built my first Halloween house in my aunt's basement up in Pennsylvania with my brother and 2 cousins, and we charged $0.25 to get for kids, local kids, to come in and see our spook house. So I've been doing it a long time. In the 16 years I've been doing it at Universal, I've done houses, then I transitioned over to streets and Bill and Ted for a long time. And about 4 years ago, I started doing houses again with David Hughes. And it's just been a lot of fun. And I'm a history buff. I love history. I love a lot of the concept of history. My wife always says, you know, just go on Jeopardy, win $1 million. But that's where I come from, and that's what I do. And it is, like Rick said, the best job in the world.
Like I said, my name's TJ. I've been with Universal for over 18 years now. Actually been doing Halloween Horror Nights and a few other things. Actually, the fun story that I like to tell is that I've been doing Halloween professionally, actually getting paid for it, for close to 30 years now. Started actually in high school, performing in a haunted house, and then when I moved to college, I actually designed and built haunted houses, and then started working in the industry. Came here to do Halloween and stayed here ever since. And I've watched the event and the team of people grow, get more passionate, get more excited, and watch, like I said, it expand to other areas of the world, which has been fascinating to watch. Halloween, you know, a celebration, as all of us when we grew up, you know, as kids, trick-or-treating from house to house. Did anybody ever think it turned into an industry this big that actually only rivals, you know, the holidays? It's fascinating to watch and then look around the room too, how many different people from different age groups, from male to female, really enjoy the world of horror and thrills and all the aspects that come with it, mystery. And so being a part to be able to bring those stories to life, watch the reaction of our audiences, and then figure out what we can do now different and more scary the next year has been fascinating, that I've enjoyed. So for me, it's been, as all these guys have said, a lot of fun. And I'm happy to continue to do it. So tonight we'll have some fun too.
You're going to hurt my feelings if you don't clap. My name's David Hughes. I've been in the Orlando area since 1987, so that's 26 years, I guess, for any math people out there. I'm a history moron, so I always defer to Kim when it comes to these history. But as far as Halloween goes, and the horror genre in general, I'd say it all started back in watching Planet of the Apes when I was like 8 years old, and also being obsessed with Kiss when I was about 10. First memory went out, I think as a 10-year-old, dressing up as Gene Simmons with my winter snow boots on, because, you know, I wanted to look really cool, and then putting liquid latex paint on my face as Gene Simmons. It was really sad. So the eye was all cracked on my face. It was horrible. But I've been working on Halloween with TJ and Kim since right around 99, 98, 99, and it's been amazing to watch it evolve over the past, at least the 20 years, or the 13, 14 years that I've been working on it, that it started as a local, not a local, but a local event at Universal, and to watch it grow industry-wide as something that rivals the big celebrations like, you know, Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and, you know, Thanksgiving, the big Macy's stuff, all of which we do at Universal. But to be a part of that and to be part of the engine that has driven that holiday to become more than just trick or treat for you know, for the youth. It's something adults and the, you know, younger kids can enjoy. So it's been pretty amazing to watch that grow. So hopefully I'll be around for another 20 years or so to enjoy that.
Okay, after the fun stuff. But as we start, stories, like I said, come from all sorts of places. Different areas of our own, like I said, backgrounds. All of you are actually storytellers. Like I said, and you tell your stories every day. You show up, you tell your coworkers, sometimes you tell your family at family gatherings. We start pretty much the same way. We sit like us, the four of us, or a smaller group, sometimes, like I said, with the people that aren't here, and start talking about stories. What inspires us? What scares us? What scares, you know, some of our friends, because we're always looking for ways to make sure that the stories that we tell touch everybody, not just touch one type or one area of our audience. It's all about the diversity of the scares and the stories that we tell. So when you always start a story, you always start with a dark and stormy night. I don't have a speaker here, but you can kind of go with this one. Our first story we're going to start you off with is a story that we told, except 2 years ago, during our Year of Lady Luck. It was a story that was called The Forsaken. We're actually going to have Kim tell us this story because he was one of the major team members that actually started producing it.
Yeah, as TJ said, what we do is right after Halloween is up and running, we start working on the next Halloween. And normally it's myself and David and Mike Aiello and Patrick Rayler who are on that plane heading to Japan right now. And the four of us sit in a room called the War Room. And we just start coming up with ideas. We have a whiteboard and we just start writing down ideas. What would be a good house? Here's a good house, here's a good house. And we create a big long list and then we start knocking some of them out. And some of them take root. Well, one of our freelancers who's now a staff member, Manuel Cordero, he went to, on vacation during the summer, he went to Puerto Rico. And he went to a castle there, one of the Spanish castles. And he came back and he said, he had this entire house designed. Wouldn't it be cool if we did a Spanish castle with dead soldiers in it? And we took that, and Mike Aiello said, well, it's a good start, but Mike is a storyteller, he's a writer, and he's a director. And he said it needs another hook, it needs something more. So we started working on it, and Mike came up with the idea of what if there's a ship crashed into it? So you've got this old Spanish fort, now you've got this ship full of dead sailors. How did they get dead? I don't know, but they're dead. Then we came up with the idea he did, that he built a backstory to it with history, which I love. He took history and he kind of turned it on its ear. Instead of 3 ships that Columbus left Europe with, there was a 4th ship. The 4th ship.
We heard about that 4th ship.
Why have we never heard about the 4th ship? You all went to grade school. And you never heard of the 4th ship, right? Nina Pina Santa Maria. No 4th ship. What's that?
He didn't graduate.
So the 4th ship, there was a mutiny. The captain was jealous of Columbus. There was a mutiny. Columbus's crews overpowered this 4th ship, sank it, killed all the sailors in it, cursed it, struck their name, the name of the ship, the name of the captain who was
Cabot?
Antonio Cabot. Anyway, struck all that from the history books. That's why you never heard of him. So now this ship is at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Columbus sails on, discovers the New World. They start building forts and settlements, and 100 years goes by. So this ship is at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean with all these dead sailors on it, and they're cursed. They're still alive, but they're dead. They're zombie sailors. And a hurricane comes up, and it picks up this ship from the bottom of the ocean, and it drags it across the ocean, and it crashes it into a Spanish fort in the Caribbean 100 years later. So you're walking into a fort that a battle is going on between the undead Spanish sailors and Spanish soldiers who are alive, and you're walking through the middle of it during a hurricane. And I loved it because one of the things David Hughes did the ground plan for that. Manuel actually did the drawings for it. It's very visual, and for those of you who have gone to Halloween Horror Nights, I love that we do it big. It's like go big or go home. So we give you big facades and big things and great scenery. They've shot movies in our sets after we're done because the sets are beautiful. I'll get the video up on. You'll see a short bit of it.
So for you folks in the cheap seats,
It was a great
times when you come to our event and you come up to the front of a house, there's a big facade. You know, it's Dracula's castle, big giant, 40 feet tall and 60 feet wide, or it's some other facade that it sets the mood. Well, in this house, you just walked right into a little, the cell blocks. You walked into the cell blocks. It was small, it was contained, and halfway through the facade, through the maze, you walked out into this courtyard, and all of a sudden you were in this giant courtyard with gallows that they were ready to hang people. Some people had already been hung, and then the ship had crashed into it, so there was rigging and there were sails, and our effects team had water splashing on you and wind, and it felt like you were in a hurricane in the middle of the courtyard, I thought. And then David Hughes, brilliantly, 2 scenes after that, you're in the ship, because the ship had crashed into the side of the fort. And what we did, and it took a lot because of our safety, we tipped the room on its side, so you had to walk kind of canted. And it felt like you were on a ship, and he was able to figure it out, and we were able to do it, and I think it was a really good house.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yes.
So a little bit of history, we kind of tweaked history on that. You won't find the fourth house, the fourth ship anywhere.
A fun story about that house is that when we design our haunted houses, David and Kim sit down and look at all of the architecture, look at the space we're going into, plan everything down to every small inch. When they start building the courtyard, which has the highest point of the maze, they didn't look at the air conditioning duct system.
Oh, yeah.
So when you walked into that courtyard, all of the top of the tower was right up next. I think we were inches away from it. But in a haunted house, everything is all about architecture, character, keep you in the story. This was a bright silver air conditioning duct. Luckily, the design team figured out that if we put the sail for the ship right there, you'll never see it. We got the added bonus of that was the air duct system too. It was blowing the AC into the house, so it blew the sail the whole time into the house. So it actually worked really nicely.
And speaking of history, the three of me and David and another member of the team, Ray Kine, who does our web stuff, we went to St. Augustine for a day, went to Castillo de San Marco there, and we were taking pictures and looking at things, and it was a hot summer day and fall day. And we went up on the top because they were going to be firing a cannon, and they were getting ready to load it, and they were getting everybody back, and they're standing in the sun, and they're loading the cannon, they're getting ready to shoot it, and it was going on and on. And Ray Kine, a member of our group, said, "History's mystery, where's the beer?"
But yeah, doing Halloween takes us from different places and different locations. On that same year, we actually decided to take you back to areas of the war with a house that we called Nightingale.
Nightingale, blood prey. Oftentimes when we come up with houses, when we're that period of time when Kim was talking about, where we're just putting lots of things on the board, coming up with ideas, good, the bad, and the ugly, and that's really fun. One of the things we kept coming back to, a lot of times we'll come up with environments, just interesting environments that have nothing to do with anything else, they're just interesting. And one of the ones we kept coming back to was just the trenches in World War I. They fit our maze because they're long tunnels, turn left and right, switch back on themselves. And it was just a really interesting look, but we could never find a hook. All we have is a maze, and it's full of soldiers. So where are the bad guys? Who are we afraid of? We didn't want to just be caught in a crossfire between the Germans and the Allies. So what are we going to do? So that gets put on the back burner because you got to have a villain. We're looking at other things, different stuff. And one night during this process, I was watching, I believe it was World War I in color, or no, it was World War II in HD on the History Channel. And I'm watching that, and it's interesting. I think it was the second episode. It was about the airmen, and it was about when the planes crashed. dealing with the burns. You know, this is something that the hospitals hadn't had to deal with in the past. So this footage is showing this ambulance come up, and this horrific burn victim comes out, and all these nurses are gathered around helping him. And I don't know why, but I thought, oh, what if they weren't helping him? What if the nurses, the people we trust to take care of everything, were the bad guys? I don't know why I thought that. And then the name, Nightingale, Florence Nightingale, sort of popped in my head. And I just came up with the idea that what if they were in disguise? What if they were these cloaked demons or creatures, and they were like parasites? They would show up anywhere there was a major disaster, whether it was an earthquake or a war or some sort of famine. And they could move in and out amongst all these victims that are dying and feed upon them and be completely hidden because they are scavengers, not hunters. So I brought that back to these guys the next day, and they're like, "Ooh, that sounds really, really cool. Let's do that." So we started expanding upon that story. Mike Aiello wrote a great way of getting that story across by almost doing a Ken Burns type thing for the web, or at least it was for us internally, and I think it went to the web, where it was letters from a soldier who was writing to his lost love back in England about what he's witnessing. He's lying in bed and seeing these nurses and these demons come to life at night and feed on the other soldiers that are at his bedside, and he wasn't sure if he was hallucinating because of the drugs or if it was because he was dying. So it was these letters that progressively explain more and more of the horror until the letters just stopped.
And they get darker and darker.
They get darker and darker.
And nobody will believe him. He's saying the nurses at night, they're these demons, and they're killing, and
you're bad, you're tired, you rest up. So that was our basis of the story. That gave us a point to jump from to create the entire maze. And as Kim mentioned earlier, one of the things we try to do is, in a shorthand, when we do these massive, big facades, because a lot of people that come to the event are there for the first time, they're not exploring, they may not be exploring the web, so they don't have a lot of backstory. They don't know what they're getting into, they're just going into this. Let's go to the next maze. What's that? Okay, it's called this. It's called Nightingales. All right, let's go. What is it? I don't know. Let's show up and see. So one of the things we try to do is visually convey a really quick backstory, or at least give a setting the moment they walk in. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, we got 1,000 words to tell them what's going to happen. And so we know we're going into these tunnels, and it's like, well, what kind of facade? You can't put a building there. There's no buildings out there. So Kim came up with this great idea of, if we're walking into the tunnels, having a tank that's suspended over the tunnel. So you walk in, and there's this, what was it?
A Mark V English tank that hits.
The one in Indiana Jones.
Yeah, the one in Indiana Jones, the third one. So it was over the top of the trenches. So you walked in, and it was obviously disabled, but it spanned the trench. So you walked in, and you had trenches on both sides, and you walked underneath this World War I tank that we built.
Yeah. So that was that year, that was probably my favorite house, just because of the way the whole story came together, the way the sets were executed, and the fact that it was completely different than anything that we had come up with before. So hopefully in the future, we might revisit the Nightingales in some completely other setting, but use those characters again, because I'd love to revisit that. That's the Nightingales.
To continue on with Nightingales, though, the thing that was fascinating about it too, that we really didn't go too much into our audience, but it was placed in actually a factual location. It was placed over in the British UK area.
It's the Battle of the Somme.
Which was seen as the bloodiest battle to date. They have the most casualties.
And 50,000 casualties the first day.
And with that, we also, from that, within the maze, again, tried to, as best as possible, really put the authenticity with all of the set dressings, with the tank itself, and a lot of the architecture. We put the maps of that area, of that battle, a lot of the other elements within the trenches that you made. But at the very end, there was the finale. And every time we do a haunted house, we're always about, you have to have a big, element at the end of your haunted houses. Hopefully it's two parts. One, to give your best care, so when people leave, that's what they remember. And secondly, it also is really what, it's the end or the close of your play, your story. You want to close strong. So at the end, we had a certain area, and I'll let Kim continue that story because it also has some fun history aspects to it too.
Yeah, we had a machine gun. We had a Browning air-cooled machine gun, and then we had a Nightingale that was rigged. Our riggers rigged it so she flew over the top of you, which is very cool. So you're going through this trench, and we had different things. One called the horse trench. It had a dead horse hanging into the trench. We had the ammo trench. We had the officer's tent. And we had a biplane wing, triplane. We had a triplane wing crashed into a tent. And actually, one of the things, that's probably what you're thinking of, we try and stay, what we buy, we try and be accurate. And I said, well, we'll give this one soldier a Tommy gun. And I looked into it and I thought, okay, great, it's the right era. And one of our fans got online and said, Tommy guns weren't in World War I. I went, no, look, I have it right here. And then I did some more research. I thought, oh yeah, they were built, they were never shipped. So he was right. They never made it to France. They were called out on my history. Yeah, we were called right out on it. But the finale had we had a soldier there with a machine gun, and the Nightingale flying over the top of you to the other side, and then he pulled out a gun, and another Nightingale came running around the side. So I think it was chaotic, and it was a big wow. It was like leaving laughing.
You have a question?
It's actually not a question, it's a statement. I am actually a nurse. And I loved this simply because you took the perception of our profession, especially because I'm actually a pediatric nurse, and you completely turned it like all the way around, which was so... But no, seriously, that was one of the coolest things. It was like, you can see us from a really, really nasty perspective because we are dealing with people at their most vulnerable times. We really are. I mean, and we have people who are completely dependent on us. And to know that you have the ability to stand over them and have that control, it really turns it.
Well, the patients are at their most, I mean, you can be no more vulnerable than that.
Right.
And then how sick of us. They take that moment and say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. People will never trust nurses ever again.
No, don't do that. I'm not saying don't trust us.
Yeah,
but it was great seeing us portrayed in a completely different
and that kind of shows you what we're about, because when we did Jack the Clown years ago, there were all these people who were, there were clowns that were picketing in front of Universal, and there was a thing on the news that said, this woman said, oh, I have this whole collection of clowns, and now my granddaughter who's 6 is afraid of them, and we're like, yeah.
So why all this attention to detail? And why all this diverse stuff? Well, because what we've discovered is that our audience has very different sensitivities. They're afraid of being vulnerable in a medical situation. They're scared of clowns. They disdain ghosts. They can't imagine The Walking Dead, because we have to deal with hundreds of thousands of fans this year. We need to be able to give them all the appropriate scare. They're not all afraid of the same thing, so that's why it's so diverse. And that's why we throw it away every year, breaks my heart, put it in dumpsters and start over so that we can do it again next year and you will come back. It's show business. Show business. Mommy.
You guys are very quiet, so either we're great storytellers or we got to get you warmed up here. Okay, that's a question in the back.
Can you guys hear me up there?
Yeah.
My question is, you guys take such pride in creating all these stories and bringing them to life in these houses. Do each of you have a particular house from any year that you take the most pride in?
Okay, if you guys didn't hear the question was, do we have any particular house with our years of doing Halloween Horror Nights that we have great pride in, great love for? So I'll start with David.
Okay.
You guys have a question?
Sure. I mentioned Nightingales, which is one I really liked. From a story standpoint, I think it all clicked on that one. The other one I think was actually the same year. again, I like the story. The stories we come up with so that we have something to go from. We start with the story and the setting, and it's really, it acts as a roadmap, or I think of it as being, you could either be in a lake on a raft with no current and you have no idea where you're going to go, or you can be on a raft in a river where you're, and it'll take you someplace, and you still have to steer or you're going to bang around. But I always look at that story as our river and our current. We still have to steer through it, but it gives us a direction to go from. So we do it for that, and then that helps everybody that we're trying to explain to. We come up with these ideas, but our job after that is to make sure everybody else understands all these things. We can't convey it to anybody else. We're not doing a very good job because it starts with us four, then it keeps pyramiding down to everybody till eventually it gets to the public. So we have to understand that. Now, that was a long-winded way of saying. One of the houses I really enjoyed was Winter's Night, Haunting of Hawthorne Cemetery. Well, there's many reasons. One, it's a freaking cemetery. It's Halloween house. I mean, that's awesome. And then the fact, then we layered on the aesthetic of winter just because it's cool.
Snow.
That was just snow. But it was a great. I don't know how many, and I don't know how much this got out there, but it could have been just that. We could have had a cemetery in the winter, and there are ghosts. Okay, fine, you got a Halloween house. But another layer of that story was the idea that there were the caretaker of that cemetery had a job to do. That these ghosts weren't necessarily malicious, but they had to be contained within the cemetery. It was an annual event. I don't know if it was annual or every 10 years or blue moon or something. But it was this caretaker and his family through generations had this oil, this sort of magic oil that glowed a blue light, and he would take these lanterns and place them around the perimeter of the cemetery, and it was this light that kept the entities as they rose from the graves contained within the cemetery. That one was another one, just visually I thought looked really, really nice, and I thought the story was a neat take on just a typical ghost story. So you were surprised and frightened by the ghosts, but for the most part, they weren't malicious. It was just trying to keep them contained, or they're going to wander around, for all eternity. So that was a house I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, thank you.
Oh, it was great. It actually, I think, rated that year the #1 house. Yeah, I loved it the best. Interesting question. I'll answer it a bunch of different ways. When I look at what we create, I look at it at a lot of different perspectives, from houses that are beautifully scenic designed, ones that actually just scare people, and what we love. But from a story standpoint, like I said, I think all of us, you could probably ask the question, and we're definitely fans, grew up with the classic monsters. That was something that I think we were all either willing participants, subjected to it. When I was growing up with my dad, he'd watch the show, I'd be behind a pillow, saying I'm not watching, but I am watching. But a few years ago, I think it was 2009, we did Frankenstein. Interesting piece to this is we did our version of Frankenstein. That year we were very focused on what was called Rip from the Silver Screen. And we took classic Universal horror characters and we wrote our own stories to them. Well, in this one, this actually story started after one of the last classic horror films from Universal, where the Tower and Frankenstein's, the Dr. Frankenstein, the castle was pretty much, collapsed and in a big flame and blah, blah, blah. Well, when we sat down, the story picks up right from that point. And what has happened is that Dr. Frankenstein has made it back to the castle to continue his work. His monster that you saw in the film actually is loose and has left, basically, the area of the castle. And Dr. Frankenstein has come back. Basically, he's put the castle back together. And what was fantastic on the scenic design that these guys did if you walked through the house, the area of the castle that had either some dilapidated walls or areas that needed to be repaired, he repaired the castle much like repairing the monster. He took large bolts and staples and put the castle back together. So in the scenic design, it was beautiful. It told a story. It's that Dr. Frankenstein was coming back to work. He actually started on basically his laboratory, and then continued with the monster. As you went through the house that year, you came in contact with his various new creations, and he named each one of them basically to the Greek alphabet, from alpha to beta, and so on. And so as you made your way through the house, you saw progressively better monsters that the doctor had created, to the finale where the original Frankenstein's monster had showed back up to battle with Dr. Frankenstein's new creations, and Dr. Frankenstein at that point perishes at the hands of his own creations. So I thought it was a fantastic story. It was interesting because not only did we create it in character for our audience, but we also created it in scenic as you made your way through, to David's point, to be able to kind of take this story and expand it in multiple different areas. And for anybody who makes it through the haunted houses, they can pick up on these different types of story points and walk away with a whole new appreciation. And I thought that was fantastic, because we took a classic story that everybody's familiar with, added the characters that people have some knowledge about, and rewrote it with an expanded story on our new path, and gave people now a new opportunity to learn more about Dr. Frankenstein and his kind of crazy work. So I thought that was great. So that was fantastic. Well, I can't talk about it.
In terms of favorite houses, last year we were able to do, I was able to design a house called Gothic. It was a Gothic cathedral, and again, the backstory, I love the backstory that Mike had come up with, was it's a Gothic cathedral somewhere in Europe, and if you've ever been to Europe and seen the big, beautiful cathedrals, they're constantly in renovation, they're constantly repairing them. So as you walked in, again, our facade was huge, it felt like you're walking into a big cathedral, and there was scaffolding, and there was tools and stacks of brick and mortar and different types of workman's tools, masonry tools, because they're repairing the cathedral. Well, all of the gargoyles in the cathedral are there to protect the cathedral, and they come alive when everybody leaves at night. And you're going into the cathedral. The workmen have gone for the day, so there's scaffolding towers and there's tarp and tools. And you're walking into this place with, we developed several different gargoyles. We had a cat and a bat and different animals, full costuming, full prosthetics. Our prosthetic team did a great job. Wings, we had one on stilts, we had gargoyles flying over the top in 2 different locations that would fly over you, rigged. But my favorite part out of all of it, and David actually developed this little trick several years ago, but I stole it from him, is you walk up onto a deck, and we had mirrors, 16 by 16 foot mirrors on the floor. And you look down, and I had a model on the ceiling 20 feet up, and it was a miniature model of the cathedral floor. So it was the pews, the altar. So the pews were 18 inches. The altar was small, and it reflected. So when you walked in, you looked down, and it felt like you were 60 feet in the air because you were seeing down.
That was amazing.
I had a lot of people. My mom went through the thing, and she says, "Oh, I was so afraid being so high." I said, "You were 6 inches off the ground." So I don't know if you can understand how that happened, but you'd look down and you'd see us, and I think that worked really well. And I just had a lot of fun designing that house, and it had a backstory to it. Gear, we call them geargoyles.
We were tossing around the idea of like mechanical, or not quite steampunk, but like gears, and we both kind of looked at Mike Aiello, and basically our eyes just said, "That's a stupid idea." And he was like, "No, we can call them geargoyles." And I was like, "No, that's awful."
So I love this question. What's your favorite house? What's your favorite scare? Here's the absolute honest truth. This is the deal. I get to work with these creative people and others in this room, and some new folks that have just joined me from UCF. My favorite house is the one that's coming this year, because it is so cool.
Okay, how many times have you said that?
I say it every time.
That question was asked.
The reality is, it's the truth. It's the collaboration. The past is history. It's great. It's fun. But it's what we're the creative challenge we're going to face tomorrow morning. We have no idea what it is. But we're going to address it. We're going to laugh like hell. And it's going to be great. So.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
You don't realize we laugh all the time. Like, it's stupid, like, you know, milk out the nose kind of.
Okay, any other questions? We'll move on to our next story. And we'll give actually Rick this microphone.
Oh yeah, I took a vacation once and went to San Francisco. Had to go to Alcatraz, which, by the way, if anyone's going, make a reservation.
Yes.
You don't just get there and get on the boat. You got to be scheduled. And we were planning Halloween Horror Nights, doing a creative meeting, and said, "Hey man, what if we did a haunted? What if we did something that was like the world's worst prison? In fact, Alcatraz was supposed to be, what if it had a sister prison?" And this was the result. Hellgate Prison.
What year?
2004.
Thank you.
Strongest and highest security correctional facility in the entire Federal Bureau of Prison system. I'm Warden Robert Strickland, and once you step inside Hellgate Prison, you belong to me. Here, dozens of immoral and guilty men have died by hanging in the courtyard down below. While we've retired the trusty gallows, the place of just
The script's on the table. Watch you just looking down at the script.
affectionately known around Hellgate as Old Smoky. Use your eyes, whatever eye.
So, yeah, as we were saying,
Well, that's one of our more talented, very talented actor, and an amazing singer, Bryce Ward. Some of you knew him as the caretaker.
Yes.
For us, it'll always be Robert L. Strickland. I remember one of my favorite stories is Bryce, who is a Broadway-trained actor. I heard him sing Man of La Mancha down at the Bob Carr. It was unbelievable. He was just an amazing, talented guy. You could see him on a regular basis in the horror makeup show, I think. Anyway, Bryce came to me after we shot this, and he said, "What'd you do to my skin?" I said, "Oh, man, we found a filter that gave you age spots." He said, "I've been fighting that my whole life."
the story that came up that year from Rick's vacation, looking at Alcatraz, we actually went back and researched the history of Alcatraz and a lot of why it was placed at the location it was placed on the rock, what it was seen in the penal type of community, and that's where we decided that Hellgate would be its sister prison. It would be a prison that was basically hidden from society, so nobody knew about it. But if you were bad enough and basically assigned to go there, it was a place that was basically run by a huge disciplinarian with Warden Strickland. His favorite way to penalize, or at the same time discipline, his inmates was the Old Smoky. Old Smoky, for us, was kind of the pivotal point within the haunted house. we had purchased a wonderful electric chair mechanical prop. And it was very violent, very animated. The thing would, when it would basically go through its effects, it would smack its feet, and it would bang, 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 and the head would go, and then it would actually have smoke, and we actually designed this whole execution chamber that you would actually make your way around in the house and go through and see this. We built it with glass, basically plexiglass windows that surrounded it, so you actually did almost like a full 180 around the room, all focused on this big mechanical effect. Great sound effects with it, great stuff, and the whole house was written to the story of Old Smoky. Warden Strickland, he was such a model warden that actually the audience now has, or basically the general public at this time, was now offering tours to go look at this model facility and how well it was actually either rehabilitating the inmates or at the same time giving them, as he put, their just rewards. So we had actually, the whole story was that you were going on a tour of the prison. And of course, in our stories, something always goes terribly wrong. And of course, there's a prison riot that you're in the middle of. So you're making your way through the house, all this stuff is happening. You get to the electric chair room, and you have this wonderful effect that happens nightly. And for us, most of everything that happens in our event has to happen quite frequently because the number of people that make it through our haunted houses, it is like what we call a constant flow of people. So this effect, where in other locations, would maybe happen and have a chance to basically reset and then redo it again. Well, not in our locations, it happens consistently. Well, about the second weekend in, I think, we get the phone call, because usually they call us, because they ask when something's broken, how they fix it. We get the phone call, and it's like, yeah, the guy electric chair, yeah, he lost his head. Head fell off. What? They said, well, it's just so violent, and the head came off. Oh, okay, sure, well, we'll screw it back on. We're like, sure, okay, so they screw it back on. 2 days later, head fell off again. And when we say head falls off, everybody's probably imagined it's just, boom. No, actually, with how violent the thing was and how it would flick his head like this, and it actually threw it to the plexiglass window. So, if you happened to be a guest at that time, we got like trick or treat.
Yeah, really cool, man. This thing has just thrown its head at me. Wow, what happens next? 5 technicians run in and start to duct tape the thing back on. Last one more time.
And then it kept going the rest of the night without a head. And they would call me and I'd go, and I'm like, oh, what are we doing now? So we tie it and strap it and duct tape it and sew it, and it just kept flying off. So finally we built a big bag and we strapped it down with a head in a bag.
So, and sometimes we plan all these wonderful stories, but sometimes things just happen. We gotta figure out ways to deal with it too. Hey, got a question?
Over the years, I've enjoyed the houses that were based on things that we're familiar with, like prisons or hospitals, mental hospitals, things that we've all seen and been in, as opposed to things like, Godzilla or Giant Branch, or something that's really fake. But I think the things that we've all seen, that we can dream about, and we're familiar with the situation, scares me. It's more feedback than a question. It's just kind of an idea that situations you're familiar with scare me more than cemeteries.
Yeah.
Scare me more than anything that I've been like, oh, this is fake, this couldn't really possibly happen. But places I've been and things I've seen are scarier.
No, we agree. And basically what he was saying, what he feels has actually been very effective is a lot of the stories that we tell at Universal are actually at real places. Cemeteries, funeral homes, psycho wards, haunted houses at the end of the street. We did Dead End a few years ago. And we feel the same way, exactly. A lot of creating these types of stories that we want to really, affect you in a good way, is about stuff you want to be familiar with. If we have to take you to places that you've never been before and really try to tell you what you need to be afraid of, that's a lot more work than we're actually kind of capable of doing in the short time that you come to this show. So by putting you in environments that you already have some sense of concern, some sense of already fear, or even some knowledge of having either experienced something like this, is the first place for us to start. Then our next step that we take is to also put you in front of characters that you might think definitely could be real. There's a bit of fantasy in there, but our job as storytellers is really to kind of take you over that threshold. Once you enter the world of a haunted house or a haunted attraction at Halloween Horror Nights, these guys have done a phenomenal job to make you really feel like you've been transported to a place that actually is real. It has smells, it has sounds, it has characters that might not be something that is real, but it definitely feels like it because you can see it, you can smell it, you can actually, hear it. And that bit of, that threshold of fantasy to reality is kind of a journey we take you on. And you guys definitely going in willingly. I don't know over here. But it is what we have really come to enjoy, is that imagination that you come to our event with and actually partake in really kind of your own, kind of journey in itself, to come in contact with these environments, these characters, and actually, kind of test your own fears a little bit. We kind of say it's almost like it's a roller coaster, on the ground. You make your way through, peaks and valleys. Most people will do it because they love it. Some people will definitely do it because they have fears of it and they want to overcome them. Some people do it just to watch the reaction to the guests they're with, which we see a lot of that. But it is fascinating to watch not only the journey that we put you on, but the journey that you take too. We spend a lot of time at the exit, watching our audience exit the house, and you'll see this immediate kind of reaction where they might come running, screaming, and 2 seconds after that, they start laughing. And you say, really? Yes. And it's an amazing, flip of emotion from, for a second, that they thought that, oh my God, that creature was real, that monster's gonna get me, I'm in fear of my life. And when they step outside of that environment and they realize that they're back in the world of Universal Orlando's theme park, they take that second of a breath and they kind of go, well, that was a lot of fun. They laugh about it, like I said, or the person who's watching the other people scream, they're laughing the whole time all over. But it's a wonderful journey and a ride that we love, putting you guys on.
There is another element to that too, and that is that technology is advancing to a point where we can do things now that we couldn't do just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And whether it's video projection or new audio systems or new materials that are lightweight that allow us to manufacture effects that we couldn't do years ago, now we can. And of course, the success of the event has allowed us some more funding to experiment new, bigger and better things.
I was gonna, just real quick, just to jump on that, the last part of that statement was, we love doing, like you said, doing environments that are already familiar with the guest, a hospital, a darkened alley, something like a prison. One, it makes our job a little easier because there's a shorthand to the audience right away. But the other type of house that we like to do, and actually usually rates higher from the scare standpoint, are the ones that people have no idea what the hell they're getting into. And it's a lot of times our black lighthouses, which, dark corners, and those usually end up being higher rated as far as scary. People love going through the big castle because it's fun to look at and then you'll get scared. But these other mazes usually rate higher because people have no idea what to expect. And every corner has something that they can't wrap their mind around it. So any corner is a dangerous corner. And those are the fun ones to watch people go through because, again, they have no idea what to expect, what they're going to see, and it's a lot easier to scare them in those houses.
Okay, we had a question over here, and I'll get you a second.
You guys were talking about flow a couple minutes earlier. Is there any point at which maybe in the middle of your event season that you see that the flow isn't working right in one of your haunts? Would you maybe go through and change it one day and maybe get it to change a little bit better? Or would you just take note of it and next year maybe plan differently?
Okay, the question was that as we talked about the flow of a haunted house, and his question was about the middle of the season, do we look at, maybe about 2 weekends, do we look at it, do we monitor it, and do we adjust it to make it more successful, or do we just take note and move into next year? The wonderful thing, part love it and probably part hate it, is the audience is 100% unpredictable. Our job as designers and storytellers is to try to understand that as best as possible. The environment that we create has really no control over what you do in that space. You can jump up and down, you can roll around the ground, you can stop, curl up in a fetal position. And we've seen all of that before you. But for us, a lot of the design of how we tell the story, from the characters that you come in contact with to how the lights, the special effects, the audio works, it's all about moving you through the space. So you see these areas of excitement and then you move on. We don't want you to stop and wait there. We want you to continue to move. So by nature, we're always out there tweaking and adjusting. I tell a story, which I love to do, which is we have partners that design with what's called Universal Creative. They actually design the ride attractions, the Rip Ride rockets, the Transformers that just opened. I jokingly tell them, I said, they have an easier job than we do. And they look at you like, what are you talking about? We're designing multi-million-dollar things. They got ride cars and technology. I said, yeah, but when you put your guest in the seat, you design it to exactly look the where you want them to look. You give them the sound exactly when you want to give it to them. And their environment is pretty much driven by what is the point of view that you 100% control, not us. We put you in a haunted house, you can look at the ceiling the whole time if you wanted to. Most people look at the floor, but they don't want to look up. A lot of people look at the back of the person in front of them because, again, so they miss a little bit about what we want to see. But the point is that we have to design for that. We have to design to really make you look the place you need to look, or distract you away from where you're not looking, to tell the story, and then actually monitor it. So when we start our event, it will change and evolve over the 4 to 5, this year is 7 weeks actually. Because it keeps changing a little bit, and it changes for 2 reasons. One is the performers start to understand the guest. They start to realize that how you react within the space, they actually are our best tool to scare you. The performer actually can adjust in a millisecond, where a mechanical effect cannot. Mechanical effect will always operate and basically affect you the same way, where a performer won't. If he sees you walking in the room and you're hesitant at any moment second, they know that's a great way to go attack. If you're bold and they might use you as a distraction and scare somebody else. So again, it's a great way to adjust. So to answer your question is that yes, we adjust it, we change it weekly, daily, hourly. We have people that's monitoring the house for performance coaches that deal with our actors from the technical side of the house that make sure that the sound is where it needs to be. And if we're learning stuff from our audience, from either how they react or also how they post online, I won't point anybody out. We pay attention to all of that because that definitely makes the product better for everybody, and that's the goal too. So.
To add to that, you were saying that next year, do we take note of what worked and what didn't? And the answer is absolutely yes, every year. And just like we won't do something again that didn't work, we're not above using the exact same arrangement and gag again if it worked really, really well, and just putting new clothes on it and rearranging it. And, the people that may or may not recognize it as a similar layout as the year before. But if something works, you don't not do it just because you already did it. Do it again. Do it again.
Listen, if you're in one of the soundstage haunted houses, look up.
Yes.
Don't look down, but look up. You'll see there are catwalks above the entire house, and there are people up there watching minute by minute to see if there are safety issues, to see if there's flow issues. Spend too much time up there during Halloween Horror Nights.
Or just to laugh. Or just to laugh at the people going there.
Personally, I mostly just go through touching everything, seeing how you guys
Next time, look up.
Okay. There's a question over here. Yeah.
Y'all, I should know this, but who is Cary, Ohio? And I have Cary, Ohio, and I've not seen Cary, Ohio this year.
Wait for it.
Be patient, Claire.
Everything is
Okay.
on how you deliver the story too.
Yeah.
Let me come back to your, when I'll ask, he had a question right here, we'll come back here.
Yes, is there a certain requirement that, such as an inmate, that you have to have, like grow out a beard or look like a prisoner?
Oh, for it to be what?
Oh,
For
yeah.
casting, people are typed out. Either you need to be unusually tall or big or short, small, childlike. But if you're a woman and willing to shave your head,
Yeah,
you have
no
roles.
friends.
Oh, well, you're you were asking about Cary, Ohio, where that came from? I think a lot of people know this, but, what's that? Was it 2008 was the first? One of our show directors, Laura Wallace, grew up in the great state of Ohio.
Yes, sir.
As did I. Go Buckeyes. Oh, wait.
Yes, sir.
So, she grew up. She grew up in a really, really tiny town called Cary, Ohio. And jokingly one year, we just went to the set. I don't know what the first incarnation was. A schoolhouse?
No, it's a schoolhouse.
Schoolhouse.
I did a schoolhouse,
Took
and we
place
placed it in
in
Cary,
Cary, Ohio. And just as Stephen King had Castle Rock as one of his go-to towns, over the years, we've just started setting different things. We've adopted the town of Cary, Ohio. Meaty Beach was there as this sort of center hellmouth of all things evil there. Yeah, so it's just been our thing to go to. So turn on my phone. Oh, now later.
Is there an LT update?
Well, with the what little time we have left here, I'm going to skip over one story. We had Castle Vampire, but we'll skip through that one. So, great year, 2004 also. And take you to something we wanted to end with, which was, this was 2009 story that was actually overall thematic for the event, which was the Universal Palace Theater. And 2009, the thematic that year for the event was Ripped from the Silver Screen. So it was all about movie films. So we sat down to tell a story through the interactive experience that year and came up with a fictional place called Universal Palace Theater. Well, we went back into history and looked at movie theaters, old movie houses from the 1920s. And come to find out also that Motion Picture Studios, and Universal Studios one of them, actually purchased and built a lot of movie theaters. The reason being was that back then, they were not only the companies that produced the films, they were also the companies that distribute the films. So to distribute the films, they would actually put them in their own movie houses. So we went back and looked at a bunch of this history, and we've come up with a fictional place called Universal Palace Theater. Surprisingly though, when we did the research, there was a few actual theaters that were haunted, that were owned by Universal Studios back in the 1920s. We actually read a lot of their history, understood of some of their fictional ghosts. One was a kind of roaming bride through the place at certain times of the night. Interesting, the history continued is that about the, I want to say like the 1940s, don't quote me on my dates because the end is 2009, is that Universal at that point actually had progressed a lot within the theaters, actually started doing a lot more with sound and sound design, but they also got out of the theaters and sold the theaters. And actually, kind of turned them over to other people. So what we did is we sat down to Rick's point, took a little bit of fact and became fiction. And we said, okay, this theater was built in that same time period by Universal Studios. It was owned for many years, and all this horrible tragedy had happened in the theater. And we actually wrote these different types of ghost stories for every haunted house for that year's event. So we had a haunted house. That year we had the House Dracula, we had Frankenstein, was the spawning and stuff. And so each different types of people who went to the theater had horrible occurrences at the theater, and their stories lived on. If you had a chance, or had not, you should take a walk over to the exhibit because part of the theater is actually now on display, and it shows you a little bit of the stories that we wrote. That year we also built, it was actually an 8x8, 8-foot by 8-foot model, physical, half-inch scale model, to actually give our audience a chance to actually go to this kind of fictional theater and learn all about these kind of horrific stories. It was told in a way, this is what's actually so fun, that year it was told in the way of a museum exhibit. And funny that now, these many years later, it actually is in a museum exhibit. But it actually classified each of these strange occurrences, and of course the theater was in Cary, Ohio. But each of these different people had come and somehow had some terrible things. And funny that again, back to truth become fiction, is that in our theater, we did have a bride who showed up. Supposedly, she was drained of all her blood, and now is a ghost within the theater that roams the theater. So it kind of mimics some of the stuff that we had found in some of our actual history that Universal had. So again, fun stories to tell, to bring them to life and actually use a lot of what's out there in the real world history to tell an interesting story.
Yeah, but everything we're doing this year is real.
Before we close though, we wanted to see if there's any last questions or stuff that we can answer for you guys. I did want to say we've enjoyed our time here with you to talk a little bit about the stories. The reality is, as much as we get into this window of you got from this time to this time, we could probably be here all night because we have fun stories to tell. We enjoy actually talking to you guys. It is a part of what we love to do. When creating the product for ourselves is not why we do this job. We create the product for the audience that actually enjoys it, experiences it, gets thrilled by it, is joyed by it, definitely gets scared by it. You're yourself.
I do it for myself.
He doesn't from Ohio, actually. Get Ohio? Did I get Ohio out of you?
Yes.
No, it's definitely something that we as storytellers have come to enjoy. And a lot of it, surprisingly too, is that by talking to you guys, by interacting with you guys, you tell us sometimes your stories, and sometimes a piece of that component, a character that you might have recognized or was afraid of when you were younger, gets wrapped into a story that happens in Halloween.
But we will not pay you for it.
My legal counsel. But no, I said, thank you.
Thank you.